Welcome to FBB Forum. I'm very pleased to welcome the beautiful IFBB Women's Physique Pro, Cara Kerluck, from Kelowna, BC, Canada, which is near Vancouver. Cara got her pro card last year at the Olympia, Amateur Olympia, I should say, in Orlando, and she made her pro debut this year at the Texas Pro. So welcome, Cara. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it so much.
Thank you. So I wanted to ask, first of all, how you got started in bodybuilding, and did you have an athletic or sports background when you first started?
Yeah, so I have a little bit of a unique story as to what got me into bodybuilding. So I was a dancer for most of my life. I did like
Oh,
classical ballet, contemporary dance. That was my life before bodybuilding. And then unfortunately, I fell into the cycle of addiction
mm,
um, in my early 20s, and I was going down like a really, really dark path.
mm,
And I got to a point in my life where I decided either like if I was going to continue the way I was going, I wasn't going to be here much longer. So I had to
yeah.
choice. And then I actually saw on Facebook video clips of the Olympia with Dana Lynn Bailey when she won Miss Olympia. And I saw it, and all I could think of was that's what I want to do. That's the path that I want to go down. So
Right.
essentially, I traded um, my drug and alcohol addiction for bodybuilding when I realized that was what I wanted to do.
That's terrific. That's really cool that you switched, and yeah, and you've been doing really well with it too.
Yeah, I started at the bottom and, put my time in and work my way up to where I am now. So I wouldn't trade that for anything.
That's terrific. No, I think that's awesome. That's a good story too. I was interested, like, how did you get started in the sport, and who convinced you to do your first contest?
Well, it was seeing Dana Lynn Bailey, but I really made the decision for myself because I knew that I needed to go down a different path, and I saw her compete on the Olympia stage, and that's what did it for me. Like nobody from like outside source, family, friends, or anything like that. It was kind of a decision that I did on my own, and a lot of people when I expressed that I wanted to compete were surprised by my decision to, go, put everything into the gym and then really start training hard for competing because of what my lifestyle was before.
Yeah.
A lot really quite surprised to hear that I wanted to compete, but they were supportive nonetheless. And well, here I am now. So
That's terrific. Yeah, Dana Lynn Bailey is amazing. I mean, she's known by her initials, so it's kind of like you got to be famous if you're known by your initials, I think.
yeah, yeah, no, and that did it for me. So
Yeah, she's really amazing too. So I was curious, like when you first started going to the gym, like what was your kind of first aha, I kind of belong here in the gym moment? And because I think, a lot of people are kind of intimidated by gyms initially.
yeah, I think it was more or less like when I got into the gym and I felt like I felt like home kind of to me. Like I
Mm,
could go in there and nobody would be judging me for my addiction recovery or what I was going through from like past trauma, and
mhm.
it was just that a place that I could go to like work out those demons essentially, and that's kind of how I knew that's kind of where I was meant to be, because it didn't matter what I was going through. I
Mhm.
would go to the gym and I would lift weights, and I would almost feel like healed at the end of my training session. So that's kind of how I knew that that was where I was meant to go instead of the other road that I was going down.
Did you find a supportive community there at the gym when you first started?
I really stuck to myself more or less.
Mhm.
Um, I did have a coach that was coaching me through to my first show, but I've always been the type of person that like when I go into the gym, I'm very very to myself, because when I go into the gym, I'm in my head and I don't really notice much of what else is going on around me. So there was always supportive people in the gym, but I was always more sticking to like myself being in my head. So
Sure.
yeah,
I
yeah.
understand. That's really cool though. I'm glad that you did that and made that switch of like we talked about. That's really good.
Yeah.
Um, I was curious, like when you first got on stage in a bikini for the first time, was that kind of intimidating? It seems like it would be kind of nerve-wracking. And do you still feel nervous now when you get up on stage?
So I think from like my dance background, I'm used to being up on stage.
Hmm.
Um, it's a little bit of a different feel now being up on stage, but I was always really comfortable up there, and I think that's one of the things that really like helped me like excel in competing, is just being as comfortable as I am up there.
Hmm.
And now like there's always like the background nerves in the sense of, okay, am I bringing my best package? But as for like being up on stage, that's like one of my favorite parts of competing. I'm super happy to be there. And with like women's physique, it allows me to incorporate like some of my old like dance life into like my posing routines and stuff. And that's probably like my routines and posing and just being up there are one of my favorite parts of competing. I just love being up there.
Yeah, that having a dance background, I mean, that helps you with posing, of course. I mean, that and you are a very good poser too. So
Yeah.
yeah, no, that's terrific. Thank you. That makes sense.
Yeah.
You'd feel comfortable because of the dance background. So I was wondering, how long have you worked as a lifestyle and fitness coach? And do you have like a separate full-time career or are you doing full-time coaching?
Yeah, so living in Canada, I work in a bit of a unique industry. So I've been coaching people for almost 10 years.
Oh,
And I actually work in oil. I work for like at one of Canada's biggest oil companies, one of their sites, and I actually run the fitness, sports, and nutrition program for that
mm,
entire site. So we have about 1,200 people that stay on site, and I run like the gym. I do spin classes, yoga classes. I do one-on-one training. I do nutrition with people. So kind of my entire life is filled with the whole fitness lifestyle.
mm.
All meshes together.
Wow, that's so cool. I bet the folks you work with there are proud of you and your bodybuilding career too,
Oh
huh?
yeah, I've actually, where I'm at now, even though I've been competing for as long as I have, I've worked in different places, that it does allow me to work on like my bodybuilding as well as work. But the community that I have at my job right now, like there's like it's a huge game changer when you are working around a group of people who are so supportive. Like they wrote me cards when I went to go do like my pro debut. Like they handed out cards, all signed it and brought it to me before I left. And they all bought the live stream to watch me compete. So that was pretty incredible, because there's not a
Wow.
whole lot of like places of work that will be like that supportive and like rooting for you. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's a game changer when it comes to like when I compete. Having that support there is fantastic.
That's so cool. That's terrific.
Yeah,
Yeah. Um, and to make that, yeah, full-time job like that, that's just perfect tie-in with your fitness career. So that's great.
yeah, it's fantastic. Anything better, really.
That's terrific. No, I think that's great. Um, excuse me.
Yeah.
Are there any, of your fitness and lifestyle coaching, any clients that you're particularly proud of and maybe would like to highlight?
Honestly, I'm really proud of like all my clients. But one of my clients, actually, she was one of my clients that I was working with. I worked with her in on the same site, and we were working together. And she was somebody that I was always really proud of. Like it didn't matter. Like she worked her ass off like day in and day out. Getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning. When we had COVID, our gym was shut down for certain hours. You could only go
Hmm.
in at certain times of the day. So
Hmm.
even if she didn't work until 11, she had to go to the gym at 5 o'clock, and she's working until
Wow.
11. She was always like, it didn't matter. She was always up to go get her training in.
Mm.
Nutrition wise, she was always like, she put the work in and the results showed for her. And yeah, her name was Tina, and just always going to be incredibly proud of her for the progress that she made when we were working together.
That's really terrific. Did she end up competing at all, or I was just curious?
No, she didn't end up competing. I mean, our goal was really just to, one, get her digestive things under control.
Yeah.
I mean, she lost a ton of weight. She lost like 40 or 45 pounds.
Wow.
Yeah. So
That's terrific. Yeah, that's great. That's great you're able to help her too.
yeah.
I bet that's kind of a rewarding feeling to help folks like that.
It is. And it was like also too, it was her mindset change that I was really proud of too. She had a whole new outlook on just everything in her life, which was almost more rewarding than like the physical results, right?
Sure, I understand. That is really cool. I was curious in terms of as a coach, what advice can you give to aspiring bodybuilders on looking for the right coach?
That's something that I have quite a bit of experience with. So like, I'm working with a coach right now. I'm working with Jamie Pender. And yeah, and she is fantastic. And the biggest takeaway that, like, because I've gone through like a few coaches, not a ton, but like three coaches, and the most important thing is finding a coach that puts your health and your longevity at the forefront instead of getting the like results for them. Find a coach that really actually has your best interest at heart, wants to see you succeed, but also has your best interest at heart, and isn't going to push unneeded. The biggest thing that I see right now is like in the fitness world is people pushing a ton of like drug abuse, like using anabolics and stuff. And it's not something that I speak on too much, but find a coach that's not all about pushing that, because you want to be hopefully in the sport for longevity. If you really love doing it, you want to be able to do it for as long as you can, right? Instead of, okay, well, if you're, if you've got a coach who's getting you to the top really fast, what are you sacrificing? I mean, every coach has their own ways of doing things, and I don't, down on anybody who is willing to go that way, but just make sure that when you're finding a coach, your health is their number one priority over anything. Because at the day when bodybuilding is over for that person, they still have to live the rest of their lives, right? So you want to make sure that you're not sacrificing your health too much, and you don't have a coach who's, pushing you to do that. So
yeah, I understand that. No, health is very important, and your long-term health is really important too.
Yeah. Bodybuilding is hard on the body as it is. You don't need to be, compounding on top of that with, ridiculous, crazy protocols and stuff. So yeah, find a coach who is more worried about your health than they are about anything else, really.
Yeah, I think this year and last year was some of the most frank discussions that I'd seen on protocols, and and I think it's kind of at the top of the mind and in the bodybuilding world that can be really dangerous, if you're not if you're going too extreme,
Yeah. And then I mean for women especially, I always advocate is like, especially in in women's bodybuilding and women's physique, is really staying true to, keeping our femininity. That's another thing, right? And a lot of, especially new, younger women coming into the sport, being, really conscious of that, and having a coach and a support that aligns with your values on where you're willing to go and where you're not willing to go. Because once you start getting successful and you see things are working, then you can, that line between crossing those that line of values and morals can be very thin. And I've experienced that too. I'm like, okay, well, maybe if I just do this, but then you got to, you know, kind of reel yourself back and think, okay, well, is my coach on the same playing field that I am, or you know, so.
Sure, I understand. No, that makes sense. That's good points though. So my next few questions are about, you talked about addiction recovery, and
Yeah.
and you mentioned that you're a recovering addict. I was wondering, how has bodybuilding kind of helped you on that journey to recovery?
Well, it's kind of just, it's been my outlet for everything, right? It's kind of like I replaced the coping mechanism of, you know, numbing everything with drugs and alcohol and forgetting about it, and I've replaced that with an outlet that I can, whatever demons I'm dealing with, I can go into the gym and I know I can just leave everything there, and I can come out and I can be completely cleared of that negative energy. Those demons that were like in my head, I just feel like it all goes away as soon as I get into the gym. It just goes away. And that's what's kept me going, and that's what's kept me, you know, from relapsing, is I found something that I love more than I loved the effects that I was getting from drug and alcohol.
Sure, I
So,
understand.
yeah.
Huh, that's really good. That's good that you've got that focus, and it really helps you with the focus too, it sounds like.
Yeah, and it's just like I love training so much that, like, I know too, like I don't drink or anything. It's like I know that I want to go in and be able to put 100% in. So I always look at that, okay, well, what am I going to do? Is that going to support what I want to do for the long term? Or is it going to give me instant gratification and then regret after? And just knowing that, yes, every day I want to go into the gym and be able to give my absolute 150% of effort. And I know the way that I can do that is by staying clean.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I think isn't that somewhat common with people in prep too, that or
Yeah.
bodybuilders in prep, that you just don't do any alcohol anyway. So which actually is kind of a good thing, because it's
It
like,
is.
yeah,
Yeah. And
yeah,
ask me, well, what do you do for fun? And you don't go out on the weekends or anything? And I'm like, no, like I don't even remember honestly what it feels like to be, you know, hungover or go out for a night. And I just don't even, it's like that was a whole nother lifetime for me. And now it's just focus on where I want to be and doing the things that I need to do to get there. So
that's terrific. Yeah, that's great. Um, I was curious, what advice could you give to recovering addicts who are maybe considering a fitness career? Like, what's that first step to get into it, you know?
honestly, just the main thing is even just stepping foot in the gym, or even, you know, like I'm trying to get my name and my story out there for people to come in, you know, if they need to just talk to somebody who's can relate to them, and just don't quit trying, right? You can relapse, or, you know, struggling is a part of it, but don't quit trying. Like, give it like a fair chance. And if you walk into the gym one day and think, you know what, I'm not ready, just go again, walk into the gym the next day. And you just got to keep the why in the back of your head, why you are at the crossroads of trying to get clean or not getting clean. You know, you just got to be real with yourself. Okay, what's going to happen if I keep going down this road that I'm going down? Nothing good ever happens from it. And then just remember the why you've gotten to this point, and why, because obviously there's a reason that they're thinking about making the change. So you just got to remember that deep down, that deep why, whether, you know, if I keep going this way, you know, I'm going to lose my job, I'm going to lose this, or, you know, essentially at the end of it, you know, a lot of addicts don't come out of their addiction, it either sends them 6 feet under or it sends them to jail or prison, right? So
yeah,
always having that why you're doing it in the back of your mind to keep pushing you forward.
sure. I was thinking too, you kind of have to maybe not associate with some of the people in your past too, because that's probably not a good influence too, you know.
Yeah, like environmental changes are huge. When I made my transition out of addiction to bodybuilding, I changed my whole entire environment. So moving away from where I grew up and where I live now was a huge part of having, like, being able to get out of that, because I was able to, in a sense, and this doesn't always work for everybody, but I was able to isolate myself away from the people that I was hanging out with, that I kept kind of going back to. But it's about, you almost have to isolate yourself, because nobody is going to understand why you're doing what you're doing, especially, oh, don't have any fun anymore. Well, no, like, you got to focus on just you. Isolate yourself, have your close family, friends as support or whatever, but remove from the environment and completely, like, immerse yourself in new things that fulfill you. I mean, whether it doesn't have to be in the gym, it can be running, it can be, yoga or hiking or whatever, anything.
That makes sense. I've seen, have you ever seen the TV show Intervention?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, I've seen that, and it just seems like it's really important to take the addict out of that bad environment, and that's almost like a first step, because otherwise you're just kind of stuck in that cycle. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
yeah,
because you're around the same people, you're around the same places, you're around the same energy, more or less, and to change that, you gotta change the environment.
sure, I understand. My next few questions are about bodybuilding competitions.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, when and where do you hope to compete again? And I thought you looked really good at the Texas Pro and last year at the Amateur Olympia too.
Yeah. So right now, like, I'm waiting till the schedule for 2023 comes out.
Okay.
I'm really more or less going to be looking at a redemption of the Texas Pro, because at the Texas Pro, we missed the mark on the peak and stuff like that, which, I mean, it was a total learning experience. I went into the show more or less, like, not with an expectation of winning that show, mainly because one, I knew who I was competing with, and okay, this was my first pro show. Like, I want to make a statement, but I'm not going to focus so much on, like, placing the top 5 as I am with just really, like, absorbing the experience for what it is. But I think also at the same time, although that allowed me to not have any disappointment in my placing and just really enjoy the whole experience of doing the pro debut, I feel like that's something too that held me back, because, I didn't come in my best at all.
Okay, sure.
For the next time, it's going to be, I'm going to win it, and going to go into it with a different mindset. But at the same time, I always believe that, everything is supposed to happen when it's meant to happen, and it always happens that way because it's supposed to.
Yeah.
So I take that away from it, and where it was like a huge learning experience for not only myself, but my coach as well. We can do differently for next time. Kind of going over what we did that maybe didn't work for that show. So it was, an unbelievable experience. And I wouldn't change it, but for next time, I'm not going in with, I can't expect to place first at my first pro show, but now I'm going to be going into it with a little bit of a different mindset and, take what's mine. Cause
I think it's a good learning experience to do your pro debut for sure. And And you get the judges' feedback too, which is
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
Did
I could have been fuller. Like I came in flat for the Texas Pro, and yeah, I knew that right away.
did the judges give you some feedback on,
Yeah.
or did you seek it out?
Yeah. So obviously, like conditioning is always a thing. Like I feel like I was leaner at Orlando when I was in Orlando for my pro debut.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and this year was just like, it was a little bit different in the way that we approached. Like, I did a 15-week prep. And I find sometimes if I feel like I don't have enough time in the back of my mind, I feel like I'm kind of already setting myself up for failure.
Mm-hmm.
Because I had like a much longer prep for the Olympia.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I also made some decent changes in areas that I needed to work on. So now for my next show, it's just, working on bringing up the glutes and the legs a little bit, and then really, really hammering down on that conditioning and just getting, as peeled as I can, essentially, because yeah, just seeing the way that women's physique is going, and it's going to be a really interesting year watching the Olympia.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, See what standard they're going to be, like what's going to be the standard for 2023.
Sure. Yeah, that's true. I was thinking, is it a little bit easier to get to the US now too? Because I think the COVID restrictions are gone, mostly
Yeah,
gone, you know?
so they are all gone, which makes it so much easier
Yeah.
for.
Mhm.
And then also too, I mean, for women's physique, and it's really sad here in Canada because we only have 2 shows for women's physique.
Yeah.
Pro, we have the Toronto Pro, and then there's a show in Vancouver Island, the Van Island Showdown. So yeah, I don't really like, for me to compete in Canada, it makes more sense for me to come down to the States and compete now, because I mean, there's way more shows, there's more opportunity. So
Mm.
hopefully in Canada soon they might add another show. But yeah, unfortunately for the women, there's not really much here.
Yeah, I understand that. Come down to Tampa. Tampa's got a good show.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I was curious, that there are actually a lot of promoters that are dropping women's bodybuilding and women's physique from their shows.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious, what's your take on that? And I just personally worry that there might not be a lot of shows left for these competitors soon if it kind of continues with that trend.
Yeah, and like there's a couple different takes that I have on it. I mean, um, women's physique and women's bodybuilding, it's going in a much different direction.
Hmm.
And I mean, you look at Dana, you look at Juliana, and the previous Miss Olympias, like the women are, it's like the conditioning and the size that these, like some of these competitors are bringing, like their physiques are just absolutely insane, like insane. And like I have 100% like respect for them and for like all women that compete. But I'm finding that women's physique and bodybuilding is moving further away from like what it was originally meant to be. I think
Hmm.
like a lot of the women's physique competitors are like, I'm seeing them come in more conditioned than the female bodybuilders. And I
Hmm.
mean, they're as conditioned as some of the men. Like it's crazy what I'm seeing. And I mean, it's like, it's so impressive. But at the same time, it's like, I feel like it's losing that, they're going more for the crazy physiques than they are like what women's physique was originally meant to be, right? Like we're
Sure.
we've got shape, we've got developed, like we're developed and lean and dry. But now it's getting like, I mean, these women are getting so lean to the point where it's like, I mean, at the Texas Pro, it's like a couple of the competitors, I was just like, man, these chicks are more diced than the dudes. Like this is
Mhm.
like their conditioning is just insane.
Yeah.
And although like we compete because we don't want a physique that's easily attainable, it's like we got to start to think, okay, now as women, where is that line where what we do is already like unhealthy?
Mm-hmm.
Are we now crossing the line of the dangerous kind of getting to the point where we're putting our bodies in distress and danger, right?
Yeah,
And
I understand.
and you know, as the physiques get crazier, you're going to have more and more people doing more crazy things to get to that end result. And we're going to start seeing more people seriously ill or dying like they have been to
Yeah.
that physique that is almost dangerous to be at, especially
Yeah.
I mean, we've got reproductive health, we've got like crazy hormonal fluctuations already as it is.
Yeah, sure.
But like to see the I would like to see the IFBB come back to its more of the values of where, staying feminine, but also, having the shape, having the hardness, the dryness, but not going to the point where it's like dangerously extreme.
Yeah, I understand that. I almost feel like too there's the line between women's physique and women's bodybuilding has been blurred a bit. You know what I mean? It's just in terms of some of the extreme conditioning and some of the size and stuff too. So
Yeah,
um,
I agree.
yeah, and it's different than when Dana Lynn Bailey was winning and stuff. And yeah, I definitely understand that. I wonder, I with some of the judging from Atlantic Coast this past weekend, I
Yeah.
almost felt like maybe there is some of that kind of shifting back to the DLB days, but I
Yeah.
don't know. We'll have to see.
Yeah, every show I find is so different what they're awarding, right? You can look at the winner of one pro show who has the complete opposite package of the winner of the next pro show, right? They're two totally different things. So I'm like thinking the Olympia is going to be really interesting this year to watch because of like following the Olympia qualifiers so far this year and
Hmm.
who's qualified for the Olympia by winning their pro show.
Hmm.
It's going to be a really interesting lineup to see what they're going to be setting the standard for women's physique for this year. So,
Yeah. It is.
and,
It's such a subjective sport too. It's just so I would think it would make it hard for competitors like you to read the minds of these judges, or you have the whims of certain judging panel at a certain show, and
yeah,
that's tough.
yeah. Again, it's subjective. It's like, okay, well, as long as I'm bringing like my best, I can't control at the end of the day. I can't control like what the judges are looking for on that specific day. I can only bring my best, right? And
Yeah. Hmm.
I if there's if we're going to go the way of that most extreme physique, I've kind of come to the realization for like my own self. Okay, so if this is going to be the way of like women's physique, this is we're going to go to the absolute extreme. I'm just going to keep competing as I'm competing and just
Hmm.
bring my best every time. And if that means that I don't make it to the Olympia stage one day because I'm not at that extreme, I'm going to be okay with that because I want to be able to compete for as long as I possibly can while not, you know, coming out of a show and have completely like, destroyed like my adrenal system, my reproductive health and everything like that. So I have a line that I'm not willing to cross.
Hmm.
If that means that I'm not one of the top pros, then that means that I'm not one of the top pros. I'd rather be able to compete for a long time because actually love doing it too, right? So
Hmm.
I don't want to just win a show, win a pro show and then come out of it and realize, well, I've I've essentially screwed myself over. I can't compete anymore.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, I think that's good that you have that line that you're not willing to cross, and you're looking out for your own health that way too.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, because I mean, there's a whole life, you know, also that's adjacent to bodybuilding, which is like your family, your job, and everything like that.
Yeah.
Once your career is done, you can bodybuild to a certain point. I mean, you can't do it forever, right? So,
Hmm.
like I said before, it's like what you got to live with for the rest of your life after bodybuilding is over, and you got to think about that too, right?
Yeah, that's
It's
true.
what's happening, you know, some of these like, you know, top tier athletes passing away, and it doesn't need to happen.
Yeah, that's true. Um, another Canadian bodybuilder from back in the day, like in the 90s, Laura Benetti.
Mhm.
I don't know if you're familiar with her, but I remember her expressing regret because she got really, really big.
Yeah.
And, but I think she realized she had overdone it because she just had so many health problems later. So yeah, you don't want to deal with that regret later, I don't think, and all the pain of what it could do to your body and stuff too. So
Yeah, and like a
yeah.
lot of not reversible, right? I mean, especially for
Yeah.
women, you gotta be really careful. And once things happen, you can't just go back and be like, okay, well, you know, I'm gonna change that. I'm not gonna, you know, go down this road anymore. But unfortunately, the damage is already done, and once it's done, it can't be reversed. And
Hmm.
every decision you make on what you're doing, you know, you got to think about that long term. What is this going to do to my body?
Sure, I understand that. Hmm. I just have a few more questions for you. And you already got into this a little bit, but what would you do to improve the sport of bodybuilding, and how would you make the sport better?
Well, I think just by, you know, being true to who you are and being true to your values, and having like clear cut values of what you're not willing to do, right?
Hmm.
Uh, and yeah, if I could do anything to make the sport better, it would be to educate the younger women coming into the sport, um, of what the risks and rewards are for what, you know, what decisions they make and which way they're going to go, right? And to have athletes and competitors as a role model for the younger generation of competitors that is coming in.
Hmm.
I would just want to be that positive influence on, you know, you can go as far as you want to go, and you can still stay true to, you know, your values as a person,
Hmm.
and still be successful.
Hmm.
And I think that it's, you know, there's a lot of people who just, you know, like they have the mindset of do whatever it takes, but that's not always the best advice for the new ones coming in, because
Yeah. Hmm.
you got to keep you we got to keep them healthy. So,
Hmm.
you know, bringing the positive message of, you know, put your health first, you know, and whatever way you're going to go, you're going to go. But the more people who are educated and have an understanding of the risks of taking things too far, then we have the opportunity to have a much healthier community in bodybuilding than I would say we do right now, because well, track record over the last couple of years has not been, it's been pretty sad in the community. So
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, I think that's good. I think that's good. You want to be a role model for the younger folks coming up, and no, that I appreciate you doing that too. Yeah, we I think bodybuilding world needs some good role models like that. So yeah. I was curious, have as a bodybuilder or even as a dancer, did you ever suffer from body dysmorphia? And if so, how did you cope with it?
oh, I suffer from that on the daily.
Okay.
One thing, you know, I laugh about it, and you know, it can be really like tough, mentally. As a dancer, I was more of the, you know, I would be super restrictive with my eating because I had to be a certain weight, right? So there was that.
Yeah.
But in bodybuilding, it's always, you know, especially as a female, um, the hardest part is coming into like the growth season and the off season for myself anyways, with body image. And it's just not being lean and shredded all year is, I mean, it's not healthy to be lean and shredded all year. You can't,
That's true.
think that it's healthy to be, especially for a woman, we need certain percentage of body fat, right, for our bodies and our hormones to function properly.
Yeah.
And I think that's when it comes to body dysmorphia, it's my transition from going through prep, doing the show, and then coming out of it, like, and because like when I'm in my off season, like I'm actually 100% natural. Like I don't touch anything in my off season, and I'm very minimal when it comes to prep. So having like my body come back to more of a natural state, you would say, even a more natural look, like I'm softer, I'm not super shredded, I'm making gains, but at the same time, it's like not seeing that shredded physique. Always something that's kind of like nagging you in the in the back of your mind. But again, always like I got to remind myself of, okay, what is my goal for the next time I step on stage? Like what am I looking to improve for the next time? So I have to be in a certain physical state for a certain amount of time before I start that prep, so I can actually, have those improvements made for the next time I'm on stage.
That's
so
true.
It's always just, it's a constant cycle of, having those bad body image issue days. But then kind of like reminding yourself what the long-term goal is, and that like, okay, what you're doing right now is required for like improvement for the next season. Because just again, if you continue dieting all the time and you're shredded lean it all the time, when you're not going to make improvements too, I mean, your health is going to go down it's going to go out the window fairly quickly. So it's that softer, more natural looking physique that I struggle with. But how I cope with it is, in the winter time, it's like I wear baggy t-shirts and hoodies. And just reminding myself, okay, you need to be here so you can get here.
Sure. I understand that. I think that's pretty common with women bodybuilders, that, and maybe more so than men, about that not feeling great during the off season, or not feeling great with your look. But I don't know. I find it kind of fascinating because of you're kind of always transforming, and you're always trying to improve. So there's always a goal in mind. So but it's so important to have that off season so you can improve. So that's something you always have to kind of keep back of your mind too, I think. So yeah.
I mean, mentally too, right? It's like being able to, go over to like parents' house for, like if they're doing like a special dinner, right? I mean, like, during competitive season and prep season, any athlete who is competing seriously or at a pro level, I mean, there's not really birthdays, there's not really, family events and holidays and things like that. But I mean, that part of life is also really important, to be able to like make those memories and have those times with family. So when I'm in my off season or my improvement season, I really focus on, making that also a priority. And because I know that when I come to my next prep season, I'm going to be sacrificing a lot of like time and things like that with, family too. So it's all kind of trying to, I mean, there's not really any balance in bodybuilding, but trying to kind of manage it the best you can. And
I totally understand that. That makes sense. Yeah. Interesting. I I just had one more question for you. Is there anything that I didn't mention that you would like to mention for the podcast?
No, not really. You kind of nailed it with your questions. So
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And I was wondering, would you mind doing a couple flexes for me real quick?
let's see here. Go.
Oh, very nice. Wow, your biceps look great.
Yeah, getting a little bit of growth.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I can see it. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Very cool. And what I'm going to do is I'll put your Instagram and your coaching Instagram too down in the description, and I'll include Jamie as well, since she's your coach.
It would be super stoked. So,
and thank you so much for meeting me on this podcast. Really appreciate it.
Get your time. Thank you.
Thank you. And yeah, I'll get it posted relatively soon. But thanks again. It's good speaking with you.
Yeah, it was good to speak with you too. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.